to spend most of the time talking in detail about what we're working on the sprint that started this week, and then some other news related to testnet and release. We did start Sprint 32 this week, and I want to give a quick rundown on what these priorities are at the top of this sprint. The consensus team is focused on completing those foundational building blocks for both the bonding and unbonding in Rolang, and then we will use those and build out the validation protocol in the consensus protocol, and also improving message protocol in Casper to improve performance. This is really important. We are observing some problems in both testnet and our devnet related just to the volume of messaging that's happening related to block passing in Casper as part of its validation protocol. And looking for ways to improve that by improving messages. So Pavel picked that up following Dom's investigation of our performance issues last week, and that is a priority for this sprint. We will also work to provide Peak to Casper. Peak will help us resolve managing conflicts and blocks, which is we're observing to be a performance blocker related to cost accounting, and that's one of the key things that's blocking our release of testnet 2. So those are the priorities of the consensus team with the sprint. For the node team, we are investigating challenges to processing the Genesis block when it includes the full complement of rock balances as reported from Ethereum. And also there are some other bug fixes in flight. The Rolang team is working to complete that bridge to cost accounting. I know I've talked about this a lot over the past several weeks, and I announced last week that we were taking a bit of a different approach by adding some more development support to that effort. That has actually gone swimmingly well. We have gone from 30 failing tests. I think the team reported today that we are down to 10. So that is moving along quite nicely. Once that is done, we will be able to shift over to working on the multi-sig wallet, which is also a priority for this coming sprint. That foundational work is the last of it is in review right now, and so once that foundational work is done, we will be fully ready to start the implementation of the multi-sig. We do have some open bugs in Rolang. They proved to be particularly pesky and have resulted in a number of PRs, prerequisite PRs as we talk about them, to resolve these open bugs. 2 of those are in review right now and continuing to work towards resolution there. The completion of the work to make use of the deploy ID and the on-chain deployer ID. Most of that work is in review right now and expect to be complete with that by the end of this sprint, and also then to start work on reducing rolling garbage in the tuple space, which is the outcome of an investigation that we did just related to performance coming out of our dev retreat in May. The RSpace team was starting on the investigation of the performance of RSpace. This is the new RSpace, and really looking or using a profiler to understand what are the hotspots, and then we'll focus on resolving those. Also, the Rolang team is shifting to support the implementation of Peak and Rolang, hopefully to get the work accelerated so that we can deliver testnet 2. Also, what's not shown here, but what's completed very recently in RSpace is RSpace helped investigate some of our challenges related to increasing time to propose, and also have recently completed the work to deliver soft checkpoints, which again is another performance optimization in the area of time to block proposal. The SRE team is working to finish off the delivery of the hardening network 1. Right now, this means completing the work to run the transfers of tokens in a testing environment, and also picking up again the testing of things in the white block infrastructure. We did, excuse me, in the past hour, we have released RNode 9.8. Very pleased with the team's effort to get that done early this week. And in the release plan, you can see in detail what that includes. I think some of the highlights are the slashing, as well as soft checkpoints for, again, performance related to block proposal. less exciting for end users, but very exciting for us as a team, is the delivery of Peak in RSpace. That is now complete. Also, the operation of the new RSpace running by default. For our node users, this means that you no longer have to specify via the store type flag that you would like to use v2. New RSpace will just run by default going forward. We do plan to remove completely the old RSpace from the code base before the end of this sprint, and that will be a part of a future release. Also, we introduced the fairness property in Node. That is part of this release. And I'm trying to think if there's any other highlights here. If you were experiencing bugs related to losing the ability to type in the console when either following a Node shutdown or related to the use of the keygen feature, that bug has been resolved in this release. We plan to upgrade the testnet 1 with this release either later today or certainly tomorrow, is work that the SRE team will pick up. So the testnet 1 is live. It will be upgraded either today or tomorrow, certainly within the next 24 hours. There is a known issue here, and that is RChain 3575. The title here doesn't exactly show what problem that users will experience. Basically, what happens is, let's imagine you started a node, you have started building your blockchain based on what the validators are sending you, and for whatever reason you kill your node. And of course, courtesy of the block store, you should be able to restart that node and expect not only to pick up where you left off, but to start catching up, and that should be a fairly seamless process. What we are observing today, and so that this bug is also in our node 9.7, and it is still in 9.8, is that when you go to restart, you will successfully locate the approved block, the Genesis block in your block store. You will successfully repeer to any other nodes on the network. But what you will not be successful doing is continuing to build a blockchain where you left off. There's a bug, and the error message is exactly what you will see. You'll see an unused COM event, and then you'll start to see your node reporting the receipt of invalid blocks. And it's a little pesky. Wukash is taking a look at it, and we hope to have a resolution to this fairly quickly, but we need to look back at what's changed in the block store recently, or what's changed in RSpace recently that might have introduced this. So just know, if you start a node and kill it and anticipate using the block store to reconnect, you're not going to be successful with that until this bug is resolved. We anticipate having a community test tomorrow at 1400 UTC. Not quite clear yet what we might be doing there, but certainly plan to hold the session and certainly hold the time. And if we think of anything between now and then, we certainly will update on the channel of things that we'd like to test or investigate with our wonderful community of our node testers. Just as a reminder, blockers to testnet 2 are shown in RChain 3168. You can take a look there. Largely, the most significant blocker, it relates to the creation of conflicting blocks when we employ cost accounting, and that is work is underway on that related to the implementation and delivery of Peak. And obviously, that's prioritized for this sprint. And then also as a reminder, risk to code completion for Mercury. I did remove one of the bullet points today. What's not listed here that was listed over the previous 2 weeks was the need to deliver Peak. That's very much on track. I don't see it as a risk to code completion for Mercury any longer, so I removed that. The thing I am calling out here is the work to reduce rolling garbage in the tuple space, some of which we will pick up in this current sprint. I'm just not quite clear yet to be able to remove this completely, to say that it's not putting the completion of Mercury at risk. But just for awareness, it's here, and we will remove it when it becomes clear that it's no longer creating a risk for completion. As always, you can check out the developer.rchain.coop website. I will share that I am working with a group of people to update the token swap page. This is the page that we point to as source of truth related to Rev issuance. That is part of the launch of the RChain mainnet. We are updating the FAQ. There are a number of updates that are under consideration right now. It's really important because this is a source of truth page, and we want to mitigate as much as possible risks to rock holders as well as to the cooperative. We make sure to review any changes to that page very closely. And then people who have subscribed to receive updates to that page when changes are made will receive an email update when we do update that page, and I'm anticipating that should be in the fairly near term. So if you are interested in getting an update of when that page updates, please go to that page. You can follow this link here. You can enter your email, and then you will be subscribed to receive a notice when we do update that FAQ in the near term. Are there any questions about where we are as a development team?
So, Kelly, when did the latest bug, what's related to picking up from where we left off, manifest?
We noticed it last week following the Thursday community test. For last week's community test, we upgraded the public testnet to run our test scenario, and then we downgraded it, anticipating being able to restart it using the block store, and that's where we first noticed it. So it definitely exists in 9.7, and then we validated that it still exists in 9.8.
Okay, all right. Have we successfully recovered from the block store with the new RSpace? Have we ever done
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we have.
All right, let's try. I thought we wouldn't have rolled over unless we tested that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's in a recent spate of changes then.
I think so, and I haven't spent a significant amount of time yet kind of going back through the PRs, but it's definitely we were successful with new RSpace before this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Of course, we wouldn't have rolled out otherwise. Okay. All right. So yeah, that feels like a super high priority item.
Yep. Wukash is on it.
Again. Got it. Awesome. Awesome. Well, this is really good progress. So I know we've had a lot of conversations about sort of the block merge stuff, and any further color on where we are with respect to block merge?
Well, so the first step is peak, and really very pleased with the rate that peak went into our space, and then we turned around after stand up today, and Dom coached the consensus team on ways that they will be able to start work to implement peak on the consensus module. And that's the first step, because it will allow us to peak a value and be able to resolve conflicts by ignoring values that are flagged as peak. And then Dom has completed a write-up of the tri-merge, and that would be a next step related to complete block merging. But right now we're focused on peak as a way to deliver cost accounting in testnet 2.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Good. I was very encouraged by the development that Pavel talked about with respect to his conversation with Artur on the beginning to optimize some of the message flow.
Mm-hmm.
It made me really feel. I mean, in the back of my mind, I was going, boy, a lot of this would be solved if we had a gossip protocol.
Yes, it would be nice. Yes, and gossip protocol is not in scope for Mercury, but we do need, even though I don't have any heartburn or regret about taking the steps that we're taking now that Pavel's doing, because even with the gossip protocol, Node is noisy and Casper messaging is noisy.
Yeah, that's true.
And we do need to clean that up a bit.
No, agreed. I agree 100% on that point. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Were there any questions in the chat for Kelly? Or
I don't see any in chat. Anything else,
okay.
guys?
All right. We have a lot of really positive business related stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think I can talk about a single thing in an open session. I can talk about them in the closed door sessions, but I don't think anything can be mentioned in the open sessions. Yeah, I was after we had a good chat yesterday, reviewing some of the developments, but on reflection, I don't think any of it should be mentioned in the open sessions, but we'll talk about it on Friday. I can mention a little bit of brain candy. Um, it turns out that there are some fun things you can do with the row calculus that are analogs of the arithmetic operators. In particular, one of the arithmetic operators that's on everybody's calculator is the square root function. And there is such a thing as the square root of a process. The square root of a process, so if your process is p, then the square root of p is the process such that when you put it in parallel with itself, so you put square root of p in parallel with square root of p, that new process results in a process that's bisimilar to p. And there's interesting questions as to whether the square root always exists, and if it does exist, can we calculate a definite form? For the pi calculus, it seems exceptionally challenging because of nu, how to calculate that definite form for the square root. Like in the same way that we can calculate square roots for numbers. The question is, can you actually calculate the definite form for the square root? And in the pi calculus, that seems particularly challenging. In the row calculus, it looks like you have a real fighting chance to do that. So I've written down some calculations to basically an algorithm for calculating the square root in the row calculus. But it raised a very interesting question, which rapidly turned into something that we can do. It impinges on the work related to Casper. So in particular, when you do the square root, one of the things that you need to do is to make sure that if you have two copies, they both end up choosing the same way with respect to a race. Now, anybody who's been following RChain should recognize that that's exactly what we use our consensus algorithm to do. So we use our consensus algorithm to make sure that two copies of the same process, which is effectively the state in our space, are going to choose the same races. So choose the same winners of the races. So that's interesting, but it becomes also a minimal equational characterization of our notion of consensus, which is also quite lovely. And then it turns out you can adjust the annihilation style COM rule, which basically says that you get to how do I say this? You two processes annihilate each other if basically throughout their evolution all paths lead to zero. So that's the so that they can be considered as annihilation is the right word for that. They sort of counter each other's moves in a certain way, so that the net result is zero. So that's annihilation, and you can modify that to sneak in this this minimal equational characterization of what we need from consensus, which is that they agree on all the winners of the races, and so you can lift that characterization up into the COM rule, and that gives you this whole generic multi-layered approach to specifying consensus within this framework, which is exceptionally nice because there ends up being a whole bunch of equational checks that have to be put in place that pin down what that process is, and then, in other words, pin down what consensus has to look like, and then asking that it be minimal in the sense that it makes no extra communication steps. That also pins that down. So that gives us this really nice sort of page and a half characterization of consensus, at least in this setting, which is very, very pretty. So that's something that has come out of just looking at some basic calculations in the row calculus. So I thought I'd share that with you because we don't often use this time to just have a little bit of fun, but really it's something. Having a little bit of fun is kind of important. So I'll just stop there and see if there are any questions about that.
Is that a kind of negotiation?
Well, what it really is making sure that the you that no COM event proceeds without this ring of processes all agreeing as to whether or not that is in fact the winner for that if that COM event is a participant in a race, and you have this sort of ring of judges, which represent your validator nodes. So these race judges, then they all have to agree. And how you get there, there are lots of different ways to get there, right? One way is that you just do a round robin. You do a round robin. You collect all their input, and then once you've gone around the ring once, if you've gone around the ring once, then you've got a notion of what they're saying. The big one important point is that it's a binary outcome, right? It reduces it down to the flip of a bit, as opposed to some non-binary outcome like it could be 10, it could be 100, it could be 5. Getting consensus over a wider range of values is a trickier problem. Whereas this is a binary outcome in the sense that it's either the left part of the race or the right part of the race, and then you can apply that in the case that you have multiple contenders. You can get it's a menu of outcomes. It's a finite menu of outcomes as opposed to something really complicated like a decimal value for updating a balance. So that's an interesting difference there. So it's not quite a negotiation, but you could write down the negotiation. Just it's quite unlikely that it would be the minimal process. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Any other questions?
There's a question in the chat, but on a different topic. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So I'm giving voice to something that Jeremy, forgive me, Jeremy, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Kiersey wrote. And it says, what is the current runway based on actual funds under the control of the co-op? For example, potential investments or contractual investments not yet received?
Yeah, so we have runway out through July, but we have commitments on, if you include commitments on funds, then we have runway out through September.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thanks to everyone. And onward and upward. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.